The chorus at Stamford Bridge, how a few tactical tweaks sparked a fan rebellion after Resenoir's PSG gamble. On a rain-slicked evening at Stamford Bridge, the stadium that for generations has echoed with roars, hope, and sometimes heartbreak, a new kind of noise took hold. A focused, relentless chant from the home end. Sack! Sack him! It was not an impassioned plea against a player who had missed a sitter or a referee who had handed out a contentious red card. It was directed squarely at the manager, Resenoir, and the cause was a sequence of small but decisive changes he made in a pivotal Champions League tie against Paris Saint-Germain. To casual observers, tactical adjustments are the bread and butter of football management. Shifts in formation, a substitution to change momentum, a tweak to close a vulnerability. In the context of elite-level European competition, however, even micro-decisions are not made in a vacuum. They are assessed by millions, magnified by pundits, and crucially, judged by the one group for whom the club exists in the first place, the fans. This examines the events that unfolded that night and breaks down how a handful of subtle, controversial moves by Resenoir catalyzed a wave of anger among supporters at Stamford Bridge. We will explore the tactical decisions themselves, the historical and emotional context shaping the reaction, the role of social media and punditry in amplifying discontent, and what the chant, simple, visceral, and damning, reveals about modern football culture. Along the way, we will consider the stakes facing the club, the pressures on a manager navigating elite expectations, and whether this moment signals a temporary eruption of frustration or a deeper rupture between manager and supporters. The context, expectations, history, and the PSG fixture. To understand why a few tactical alterations could produce such a dramatic fan response, you must first understand the context in which they were made. Stamford Bridge is not just a stadium, it is a crucible of identity. For decades, the club's supporters have lived through managerial coups, trophy-laden eras, gut-wrenching collapses, in moments of staggering glory. Expectations are baked into the terraces, sensible tactical nous, attacking ambition, and above all, the courage to match pedigree with performance when the lights are brightest. Paris Saint-Germain represented more than an opponent that night. They are a global powerhouse, heavy with star names and financial muscle, and defeating them on a European stage symbolizes relevance, progress, and vindication. The fixture carried the weight of legacy, season objectives, and the fans' collective psyche. Enter Resenoir, a manager praised for his modern approach and steady domestic record, but always on the knife edge of expectations when it came to elite European competition. Resenoir's tenure had seen incremental progress, an attractive style of play, an uptick in youth integration, and a tactical identity that emphasized high pressing, ball progression through structured phases, and positional fluidity. Yet consistency against Europe's elite remained a question mark. For supporters, the PSG match was a proving ground. How the manager prepared, adjusted, and responded to critical moments would be read as a direct statement about the club's ambition. The match, minute by minute, where the changes came in. The match itself was a tense tactical duel. Resenoir set his team up in a familiar 4-3-3 that emphasized compactness in midfield and width through overlapping fullbacks. For much of the first hour, Chelsea, if we assume the Stamford Bridge club, looked measured, patient in possession, probing for openings, and resilient in defense. But PSG's star talent gradually imposed itself. Their mobility and incisive passing began to create half spaces, and the game felt like it swung on thin margins. Then, in the 65th minute, Resenoir made a sequence of small but significant changes. He withdrew a creative central midfielder, someone who had been instrumental in defensive transitions, and replaced him with a more attack-minded player, who, while offering forward thrust, conceded compactness in the middle of the pitch. On the right flank, a defensive fullback who had been containing PSG's left-sided star was substituted for a younger, less experienced option, noted for overlapping runs but less for positional discipline. A striker known for holding up play and bringing midfield runners into the game was removed, in favor of an out-and-out finisher who demanded service but provided less defensive cover. At first glance, these adjustments seemed to be attempts to chase the game, but the collective impact was immediate and consequential. The midfield lost a layer of protection, the right flank became more porous to PSG's inverted runs and overlapping flats, and pressing triggers were altered, unbalancing the team's defensive shape at precisely the moment the visitors needed only a sliver of space. Within minutes, the cracks were exposed. PSG exploited the vacated half space, a penetrating pass picked out a forward run down the right, and suddenly a clean chance became a goal. The momentum swung. That goal, coupled with an inability to regain the previous balance, was the fulcrum on which the result tipped.
Chelsea, or the home side, would not recover, and the tie slipped from reach. Small changes, big consequences. Tactical analysis. The anger was directed at tactical nuance because the changes were the kind that told supporters a story. This manager prioritized attack at a time when containment and control were essential. Here's a closer look at the 3 changes, and why fans saw them as palatable. Midfield substitution. Tactical fragility. Removing a defensive-minded central midfielder in favor of a creative force shifted the team's risk profile. Against PSG, whose attacking weapons thrive in transition, the extra creative outlet was less valuable than the midfield screen that could shield the back four. The substitution diminished the team's ability to intercept passes and slow down PSG's transitional velocity, exactly the moments PSG thrives upon. Right-back change, loss of balance on the flank. Full-back substitutions are always double-edged. While they can provide attacking width, if the incoming player lacks positional discipline, they invite overlaps. PSG's attacking pivot noticed this instantly, targeting the newly created space. The winger's inverted movement coupled with overlapping runs exposed a gap between right-back and central midfielder, a structural weakness that begat the decisive pass that led to the goal. Striker swap, pressing and shape disrupted. Replacing a target man who contributed defensively with a pure finisher altered pressing triggers. Modern pressing is a collective activity. The striker's ability to block passing lanes and prevent easy build-up is as critical as his scoring. The change meant the first defensive line was weaker, which allowed PSG's defenders to carry the ball into midfield more comfortably, freeing creative players to roam. This previewed the precise route that PSG exploited. The tactical chain reaction is what incensed fans. Each substitution on its own can be defended. Together, they produced a predictable structural unraveling. Supporters felt the manager had gambled unnecessarily, and when the gamble failed, it was not seen as a tactical masterstroke gone wrong, but as avoidable misjudgment. The moment of the chant, a collective judgment. Fans chant, but rarely so directly at a manager in a European fixture at home. The sack him, chorus, was more than anger and noise. It was a collective verdict. Why did the reaction escalate so quickly? Emotional immediacy. Football fans are emotional actors responding to immediate stimuli. A critical goal conceded after a tactical change crystallizes blame. The stadium environment amplifies sentiment. One voice becomes many in seconds. Expectation versus outcome. The tie represented a moment where fans expected courage aligned with common sense. When the decision felt misaligned with the moment's necessities, anger was immediate. Accumulation of frustration. The PSG match was a tipping point in which prior grievances, perceived tactical stubbornness, inconsistent team selection, or the sense that the club had plateaued, were funneled into a single, sharply focused reaction. Social proof. As the chant grew, it created social proof. Individuals who might have refrained from vocal criticism found it easier to join an already noisy majority. The chant's physicality, short, repetitive, and directed, made it viral. It was easily broadcast, looped on social media, and replayed in climate packages. That immediacy transformed a moment into a movement. The role of media and social platforms, amplifying the echo. In modern football, the terraces are only the beginning. Social media and sports media ecosystems turn every chant into a headline and every tactical critique into a flood of narratives. Within minutes of the game's turning point, pundits were dissecting the substitutions on air. Streams of instant reaction, tactical graphics, and player heat maps produced a post-hoc rationalization that amplified the fans' initial response. The coverage did a few things. It gave a tactical vocabulary that validated fan anger. Pundits explained the flaws in Resenoir's choices, which lent credence to chants that otherwise might have been dismissed as emotional noise. It spread the chant beyond Stamford Bridge. Videos of the chorus were shared widely, framing the manager's decisions as a crisis rather than a single-game misstep. It encouraged polarized commentary. Partisan voices seized on the narrative, either defending the manager's overarching project or insisting that a change was now necessary. This feedback loop, chant to clip to punditry to public opinion, creates pressure that can be more potent than results alone. Managers are judged in real time in the court of public opinion, and in that court, a chant becomes evidence. Managerial psychology. Why Resenoir might have made those calls. To be fair and thorough, it's important to consider why Liam Resenoir made those substitutions. Managers are not omniscient. They operate under multiple constraints and pressures. Several plausible motivations could explain the choices. A desire to seize the initiative. Resenoir may have believed that the team needed to shift from containment to offensive impetus to unsettle PSG. He gambled on proactive change to create an equalizing opportunity. Physical considerations. Perhaps a midfielder was showing signs of fatigue or injury not apparent to the cameras. Internal data and medical input often require on-the-spot adjustments for player welfare that the crowd cannot see. Tactical counterthink. Resenoir might have anticipated PSG making a particular adjustment and wanted to preempt it offensively. When that counterthought proved wrong, the decision looked ill-conceived. Trust in attacking identity. Managers commit to a style. A change that seemingly increased attacking potential might have been rooted in a broader tactical conviction, that his team wins by outscoring rather than parking a bus. That philosophy can be unpopular in high-pressure matches where caution would be accepted. Regardless of the rationale, managers accept responsibility for outcomes. When a specific change visibly precipitates a negative result, accountability follows. But recognizing the multiplicity of influences that inform managerial choices helps temper the rush to castigate. Fan-manager relationship. Why this chant hurt more. The sack chant mattered because it revealed a fracture in the fan-manager relationship. Fans don't just buy tickets, they buy narratives. They invest trust in the manager's competence and vision. When those are called into question, the result is more than an emotional outburst. It's a denunciation of stewardship. Several dynamics are at play. The expectation of alignment. Fans expect managers to align tactical pragmatism with identity. When adjustments appear out of tune with the moment, the sense of betrayal can be acute. The symbolic role of the manager. At top clubs, the manager is the personification of ambition and competence, targeting him as a way of signaling dissatisfaction with institutional direction. The short memory of results. Football is episodic. A manager's long-term project is often judged by immediate outcomes. This creates pressure to deliver not just improvement, but the sorts of performances that justify faith. The chant therefore signaled more than a single-game critique. It was a denunciation of stewardship. Organizational response. How clubs typically react. Clubs face a difficult balancing act when their fans turn against the manager publicly. Responses typically fall into several categories. Public backing. The board or sporting director may publicly support the manager to stabilize the situation and indicate confidence in the project. Quiet reassessment. Internally, clubs may open dialogue assessing performance metrics, leadership alignment, and squad morale. Tactical assistance. Some clubs add sub-consultants or change backroom staff to help the manager without removing him. Severing ties. If the board determines the relationship is irreparably damaged, they may opt to relieve the manager of his duties. Which route is chosen depends on timing, contractual obligations, the club's long-term plan, and